These are my 2026 UFC guarantees, the things that I believe are going to happen absolutely in the year of 2026 for the UFC. The season has started. We are finally back. UFC 324 is this Saturday. I'm going to go over every single UFC men's weight class and tell you guys what I think. Not what I think, what I know is going to happen in every single UFC men's weight class, starting out at flyweight. Joshua Van will not have a single win in 2026. Joshua Van is fighting against either Manel Kape, Tatsuro Taira, or Alexandre Pantoja next. I actually believe that two of his next three fights will be against two of those three guys. Not in two of his next three. His next two fights are going to be against two of those next three. It's going to be Tatsuro Taira, going to be Manel Kape, and going to be against Alexandre Pantoja. Do I think he's going to be as active as he was before? Not necessarily. Do I think he's going to be inactive? No. Do I think Joshua Van essentially beats every other flyweight outside of those three? I would favor him. However, against those three specifically, I do not believe so. I think he's going to get finished against each of those three. I think Taira submits him. I think Pantoja submits him. And I do think Manel Kape knocks him out. I think that's what happens to Joshua Van in those three fights. I think in a striking fight against Manel Kape is much more explosive, much more powerful. I think his timing with the shots are a lot better, much more seasoned, much more tight. I just think it's stylistically a better overall fight for Manel Kape. And if that's going to be his next fight, he's going to get knocked out and take a lot of damage in that fight and probably sit out for a little bit after becoming UFC champion, accomplishing a lot. He's been one of the most active fighters in God knows how long. I mean, 10 fights in like the last 3 years for Joshua Van. He had 5 or 6 fights in the last year or so, like last 2 years maybe he's had that many fights. The guy's been a ridiculously active fighter, maybe the most active fighter in the UFC alongside Kevin Holland, and significantly the most active UFC champion, even more than Merab, even more than Alex Pereira. Joshua Van 100% has put his body through loads, the amount of camps he's put himself through, and I think at some point he's going to want to rest a little bit. Of course, kind of not sulking, but kind of enjoying the moment of becoming champion. But I also don't think he beats any of these three guys. I do not think he beats Pantoja when Pantoja comes back. I don't think he beats Tatsuro Taira. I think he gets out-grappled massively by both those guys. And I think Manel Kape hurts him badly on the feet. And I think he fights twice in 2026 and loses twice. Not a single win for my boy Joshua Van in 2026, unfortunately. Also at flyweight, Andre Lima, renowned prospect. If you don't know about him, guy is an absolute freaking specimen. Fantastic, quite literally everywhere in MMA. He's super young. I think he's 25 or 26 years of age. He's quite literally good everywhere. Quite literally good everywhere. He's going to be a top 10 flyweight this year. The thing with Andre Lima is he just hasn't been as active. I think he's going to increase his activity a little bit more in 2026. He's definitely going to be a guy to reckon with. You have no choice but to recognize this guy at how good he is going to showcase himself when he does fight, because he is a different level at flyweight. He's getting better and better overall. Sometimes he's a little bit timid, which sucks because he's so good, especially when he goes aggressive, and you could see when he has his timing down, when he is walking his opponents down, he is a night and day difference. He's literally dominating his opponents any single time he walks down. Unbelievable Muay Thai. Really good grappling overall, both defensively and offensively. Literally in love with how great he uses his power, how much he sets his stuff up. I think in flyweight, he could beat anybody in the top 10. Right now, I think he is 100% a top 10 flyweight. Skill for skill, he'll cement himself in the rankings as a top 10 flyweight. I also think that is a guarantee. Next, bantamweight. Petr Yan does not lose a fight in 2026. We know his next fight is going to be against Merab. Merab is going to get his trilogy fight against Petr Yan. Dana White apparently said it's not going to be at the White House. According to Merab, the UFC told him it will not be at the White House. So it's either going to be in April or May. Merab wanted April. We'll see if they want to book them for April or May. I'm pretty sure Petr Yan is down for either. I think Yan makes it even easier against Merab this time out, because Merab's style, again, is going to be relatively similar. It's just going to be a matter of timing in terms of his approaches. But that's what Merab needs. Merab's going to be pace, and Merab's going to be trying to put it on you with the takedowns. He shot 29 times on Petr Yan, and Petr Yan defended it 27 times. In the first fight, when Petr Yan was injured in a smaller cage, which is more advantageous for Merab's style in the Apex, Merab shot 49 takedowns. Yan defended 38 on a torn ACL and a broken hand and something wrong with his shoulder as well. I mean, every single injury in the book Yan had, and he still defended 38 of 49 takedowns in a small cage against Merab, and Merab barely even had him controlled for 4 minutes across 11 takedowns. Merab is not going to be able to proactively take him down. Jan's defensive grappling is elite, and then you go on to the next one, and of course the striking, night and day difference. Then you go on to Yan versus Umar, or Yan versus O'Malley, whatever one is next. I think Jan's going to fight twice in 2026. I think O'Malley's going to fight at the White House after fighting at UFC 324, and it's not going to be against Petr Yan. It's going because the UFC, again, promised Merab a trilogy, promised Merab the rematch. O'Malley is going to be fighting against Corey Sandhagen at the White House after he defeats Song Yadong at UFC 324. That's what's going to be next for O'Malley. I think they're going to do their goal is to do Jan versus O'Malley at the end of the year. But how long can the UFC ice out Umar? Either way, I think Jan beats Umar. I think Jan beats O'Malley. I think that's going to be his next fight after Merab. I think he beats both of them. He does not lose a fight in 2026. Remains champion. Also at bantamweight, Ayman Zahabi, otherwise known as Ariel Helwani, is not going to win a fight in 2026. I think he's overstayed his welcome towards the top of the division, and he's won a certain amount of fights that he does not necessarily belong in victory in. The Chito Vera fight was a little bit suspect, and I don't necessarily want to claim too heavily of a robbery on that one because, with all due respect to Chito Vera, he does it to himself. He fights like that every single time, gets it to a close decision, and he gets furious when he ends up not getting the split. At the same time, maybe separate a little bit more early on, maybe not the slow start in a 3-round fight where he end up losing that first round and you go from there. Anyways, Zahabi is not bad. He's a smart fighter overall. I don't think he's athletically gifted. I think he kind of reminds me a bit of Bilal Muhammad in terms of a guy who fights very smart, not necessarily the same style, but a guy who has pretty good cardio overall. He's durable. He's going to persist throughout the fight. If he is losing, he's going to push a pace. Ayman Zahabi, like against Jose Aldo, was clearly down 2 rounds in my opinion. Pushed the pace in round 3. Maybe it was 1-1, but he pushed a big pace in round 3, especially after getting hurt by Aldo and somehow recovering after the ridiculous amount of damage he took. And the guy, he persevered. The guy is definitely a guy with heart, with durability, but at the same time, I don't see him winning any more fights at bantamweight. I can't even confidently tell you that he beat Chito Vera. I think Jose Aldo beat him very clearly 30-27. I don't understand in any way, shape, or form how Ayman Zahabi was given that decision, let alone 2 rounds. Or let alone a round, let alone 2. So I thought he arguably lost his last 2 fights. Definitely lost against Jose Aldo. And going forward, I mean, he's going to have to fight a guy at the top of this bantamweight division. I don't think he can compete against them. I think his age is going to show big time. I think athletically, he is definitely inferior to a lot of these guys. Durability is going to be there. That's fine. I don't know how much longer that's going to persist, especially taking a lot of damage against some of these top-end bantamweights. I don't think he beats O'Malley, Umar, Sandhagen, Song Yadong. Figueiredo would be a good fight, I guess, but they didn't book him against Figueiredo. If they wanted to do him a favor, that would have been it. They didn't do it. They did Figueiredo versus Umar. Jan, of course, if he were to somehow fight Piotr Jan, he would never beat him, wouldn't beat Merab. Any of these top guys at bantamweight, I don't think he competes against. Mario Bautista, I think, beats him. I think there are a lot of guys under him at bantamweight that also start beating him. I think Vinicius Oliveira beats him as well. There are a lot of issues for Ayman Zahabi in bantamweight right now. I don't think he wins another fight in 2026. Bantamweight also, Alexandre Topuria, I think, will be a top 10 fighter. I think the Beksa Almakhan fight was also a very big indicator of the UFC wanting to push him a little bit more. You're going to obviously suspect that with him being a Topuria brother as well. Alexandre Topuria is the older brother of Ilia Topuria. The guy is an absolute specimen of a human being. Elite boxing overall. Fantastic footwork moving forward with the pressure. The pressure is literally suffocating, and he has high-level grappling on top of it. In my opinion, he's a top 4 bantamweight in the world right now alongside Umar, Jan, and O'Malley. Umar, Merab, and Jan. I think he's better than Sean O'Malley overall. I think he's an elite bantamweight. I think he's an elite fighter, and I think he's going to cement himself inside the top 10 rankings this year. On to featherweight. Volkanovski will not get a win in 2026. I know, man. I know. I don't want Volkanovski to lose, but at the same time, the guy's off for another year. He's fighting Diego Lopez in a rematch, a young guy who's much bigger than him overall. In the first fight, Volkanovski did get dropped against him, although he looked fantastic. Lopez also fought maybe the dumbest possible fight he could. Lopez knows he has a chin. He knows he has the durability to walk forward and to take punches and to feed a lot of the volume overall, and I think he's going to do that more in this fight. Not only did Lopez fight the dumbest fight possible in the first fight, Volkanovski did still take a lot of damage in it and took some big shots by Diego Lopez. I think Lopez is going to land those shots this time. I think Volkanovski's chin isn't necessarily going to persist as much, especially with another year off. His age is never going to help him right now, especially with the layoffs. Is just not going to be good having that long of a layoff. As a guy that old fighting another guy who's big, I mean, it's the same guy he fought, but again, a much bigger guy at featherweight in Diego Lopez. Nasty finishing ability both on the mat and on the feet, and I think Lopez is going to hurt him on the feet. UFC wants Diego Lopez to be champion. Very, very evidently. Volkanovski's time is out. I think the UFC is noticing that. I think they're completely disrespecting their champion right now by, instead of risking him losing to Lerone Murphy or Movsar Evloev, who are nowhere near as marketable, you could put him up against either Gene Silva or Diego Lopez, which was their intention. A guy you could definitely market a little bit better. A Brazilian champion. A guy who's much more, appeasing to the fans. And they're trying to push Diego Lopez a little bit more because he did beat Gene Silva. So Yeah, the Diego Lopez rematch, I think he's going to get knocked out, and I think he retires. I don't think he fights after losing to Diego Lopez. I think that's it for Volkanovski. I think he hinted at that in an interview recently as well. I think Volkanovski is done in 2026, and he has 0 wins this year. Gene Silva, I believe, goes undefeated in 2026. Now, I wanted to put that Gene Silva becomes champion by the end of the year, but they're doing Evloev versus Lerone Murphy in March, I believe. And I think the winner of that is, I mean, I don't think. We know the winner of that is going to fight the winner of Diego Lopez versus Alexander Volkanovski. When that fight will happen, maybe late summer, maybe early fall, I don't want to guarantee that Gene Silva is going to win the championship by the end of the year if Gene Silva isn't going to be able to fight for the title by the end of the year, even if he is the number one contender. I think by the end of the year, he'll be the clear-cut number one contender. I think he's going to knock out Arnold Allen at the very first card of the year at UFC 324. I think next he's going to get booked. I mean, look how active he's been after taking a ridiculous amount of damage and getting knocked out by Diego Lopez. I think he's the best featherweight in the world. I think he's going to walk down Arnold Allen and knock him out cold. I think he's going to end up fighting Yair Rodriguez, Aljamain Sterling, maybe the winner of that fight if they end up fighting each other. Maybe a Yusuf Zalal or Steve Garcia if they fight. One of these guys, one of these prospects coming up. I would say Kevin Vejos, but Gene Silva's a little bit above him right now, and especially if Gene Silva knocks out Arnold Allen, I don't think they'd make the Vejos fight right now. Maybe their goal would be like Vejos versus Gene Silva later on for the belt, if they could ever kind of get there, maybe a number one contender fight. We never know. But I think Gene Silva knocks out Arnold Allen, fights the winner of like Yair and Aljo if that fight gets made, or maybe the loser of Murphy and Evloev. You never know. That's what I think happens with Gene Silva. I think he goes undefeated. I think he fights 2 to 3 times this year. The third time would be probably for the title. If he wins 2 in a row right now against Arnold Allen and then another guy in the top 5, they're going to give him the title shot immediately. That's exactly what they're going to be looking for. So 2 wins for Gene Silva, then a title shot, or 2 wins for Gene Silva, and then he's no longer fighting in 2026. He would have ended up undefeated on the year. At lightweight, Ilia Topuria finally gets this Paddy Pimblett fight that he's been dying for ever since Paddy Pimblett threw a hand sanitizer bottle at him, and he knocks Paddy Pimblett out cold because Paddy Pimblett is nowhere near his level. Paddy Pimblett is a horrible mixed martial artist in terms of a guy who comes into the boxing. He's big. Paddy Pimblett is big overall for the lightweight division, but at the same time, he is horrible. He's horrible inside the pocket. His defense is tragic. His wrestling is horrible. Topuria is a much better grappler overall. He's a much better striker, much better boxer. Topuria is going to knock Paddy Pimblett out cold. He's going to absolutely destroy him in that fight, and it's going to be a hysterical watch, and we cannot wait to watch it happen. That is a guarantee, because Paddy Pimblett is going to beat Justin Gaethje. He's just going to out-grapple him by any means necessary. It is going to be an embarrassing fight for Gaethje overall, who begged for a title shot just to get submitted by a guy who was honestly getting his back taken by Michael Chandler and lost the fight to Jared Gordon a couple years ago. But nonetheless, Paddy Pimblett is going to be interim champion, and he's going to fight Ilia Topuria. And Ilia Topuria is going to knock him out cold, and then life is restored. Then we're happy again. Then we're back. We're back. We will be so back at that point. Topuria knocks out Paddy Pimblett. He also knocks out Arman Tsarukyan in 2025. I think I'm covering Tsarukyan's face, but nonetheless, I think Ilia Topuria knocks out Arman Tsarukyan in 2025 as well. I think Topuria is going to fight twice in 2025. The goal, I believe, is for him to main event at the White House. Him saying he's going to return April to June. Paddy Pimblett considering how much he implodes and goes back down in weight throughout like fight camps and outside of fight camp. Probably not going to fight again in April. I don't think Paddy Pimblett's going to immediately go back into a fight camp right after, like maybe 2 weeks off and then goes right back into a camp. Not even 2 weeks off. Literally 2 months of a fight camp then fights in April. No way. I think Paddy Pimblett's going to take a little bit of time off, like a month or 2, then go right back in for another fight camp against Ilia Topuria to fight him at the White House, probably the main event of the White House. And Arman Tsarukyan, I think, is going to be his next fight. I think Ilia Topuria versus Arman Tsarukyan, end of the year, is going to be Ilia Topuria's second fight of the year. Arman Tsarukyan, I don't know if he's going to fight before that. I think the UFC is probably going to force him to. And then they're going to do Arman Tsarukyan versus Ilia Topuria, as you can quite literally not deny Tsarukyan for a title shot anymore. He's a bigger star than Paddy Pimblett. He is the better fighter. He has accomplished much more overall than anybody has in the lightweight division right now. In terms of just warranting a title shot, it makes no sense for Arman Tsarukyan not getting a shot, and he will get one by the end of the year. We will get this eternally elite fight between him and Ilia Topuria, and I think Topuria's going to knock him out badly. I think Ilia Topuria finds a chin on Arman. I think he can stop some of these takedowns, scramble pretty well. I think he's fine positionally on the mat. Jiu-jitsu is fantastic. I think Arman Tsarukyan is going to struggle a lot with Topuria, especially on the feet, and Topuria's going to find him on the feet, big time. Welterweight, Shavkat Rakhmonov becomes champion. Shavkat Rakhmonov deserves a title shot right now. The last time Shavkat was going to fight, he was booked against Bilal. He ends up getting hurt, has to pull out, and then they do JDM versus Bilal Muhammad next. That's why Jack Della Maddalena fought Bilal in 2025, because Shavkat Rakhmonov was booked, and he got hurt again, and he ends up having to get surgery. Shavkat's going to come back. He deserves to fight for the title. Are they going to immediately book him against Islam Makhachev? No, the UFC is pretty stupid sometimes, so they're not going to necessarily book the guy that deserves it the most. But Michael Morales should be the next guy up, if not Shavkat Rakhmonov. Rakhmonov fights another fight. Either they're going to do Ian Gary versus Shavkat again, or they're going to do Shavkat versus Usman, or Shavkat versus Carlos Prates, maybe. I don't know. But I think they're going to do Shavkat Rakhmonov at the bare minimum, fighting one more contender, and then he fights for the belt later in the year. Either he beats Islam Makhachev at the end of the year, or he is going to fight for a vacant title with Makhachev retiring after his next fight, because Makhachev would end up being on a 17-fight win streak, the longest in UFC history, lone standing. He would have defended both belts at lightweight and welterweight. He's already 33 or 34 years of age. I don't know how much longer Makhachev is really going to go. I don't really see the incentive for him fighting even longer, risking more damage, more weight cuts, etc. I don't see a purpose for it, for other than one more fight for Makhachev. Get one more fight, get that defense, and go from there. Maybe he does defend again and he fights Shavkat, and I think Shavkat beats him in that regard. I think Shavkat Rakhmonov is the best welterweight in the world. I think he will be champion by the end of 2026. Jack Della Maddalena at welterweight, I also believe goes winless. The guys that Jack Della Maddalena has to fight some of these guys. Shavkat, Michael Morales, Carlos Prates, Ian Gary. Those four alone, I don't see him beating. Sean Brady, I don't see him beating. That's 5. Kamaru Usman, that's a very tough fight for him. I think he could beat Usman, but I don't necessarily think they're going to make that fight. I think he goes winless in 2026. I think he's going to get finished by all of these guys I mentioned, maybe apart from Ian Gary. I think Prates finishes him. I think Michael Morales finishes him. I think Sean Brady finishes him on the mat. Shavkat Rakhmonov, I also think, finishes Jack Della Maddalena. I think JDM is the worst of the guys at the top of welterweight. Yes, he fought Gilbert Burns with a broken arm. I also didn't necessarily love how he looked regardless in that fight. The Kevin Holland fight looked very subpar overall. I think we need to kind of realize the Bilal Muhammad fight that I 100% picked Jack Della Maddalena to win. He was the much younger fighter by like 8 years. He was going to march forward, and he was going to put a style on Bilal that's difficult, that nullifies Bilal's style, and Bilal is not necessarily the greatest athlete in the world or the greatest wrestler off his back foot or in the open mat. It was a stylistic nightmare for Bilal overall, and Bilal's not that great in general, in my opinion. I think he got gifted. Gifted. Yeah, kind of gifted. I mean, he was gifted a title shot, certainly. He was fighting Leon Edwards, and he just got slotted into the title shot. Sean Brady getting completely snubbed. I don't know how Sean Brady doesn't get it over Jack Della Maddalena at the time. And JDM goes on and gets a title shot over Brady. Brady fills in short notice to fight Leon. Whatever. But yeah, JDM I don't think wins a single fight against these top guys. At welterweight, maybe fights twice in the year, and I think he loses both. Welterweight, Conor McGregor does not... Okay, I don't know why it's cut off at the bottom, but it says Conor McGregor does not return. I don't think Conor McGregor returns. I don't think Conor McGregor is back in 2026. I don't think Conor McGregor is back ever. Conor McGregor has gone flip-flopping depending on who his opponent is going to be. They're no longer doing the Michael Chandler fight. The UFC seems a little bit confident that Conor McGregor is going to fight, but they don't necessarily seem like it's a set-in-stone thing. And when it's Conor McGregor, you'd feel like there's going to be a little bit more confidence behind him fighting. Not just like, oh, like, yeah, Conor looks like he's going to fight. Like, they'd be much more cementing it. They'd be much more in stamp. They'd be hyping it up a lot more that Conor McGregor is back. Conor McGregor doesn't even know who he's going to fight in the White House. The White House card is in 4 months. No, 5 months. It's in 5 months. It's in less than 5 months. The White House card is in less than 5 months. And we don't know if Conor McGregor has an opponent or who his opponent would be. Jorge Masvidal is the rumored one right now. The Jorge Masvidal that came out of the UFC losing to Colby Covington and Gilbert Burns back-to-back, essentially offering nothing in either of those fights. He did knock down Colby in the 4th round with one shot, but Colby came right back up and literally dominated him the entirety of the rest of the fight. Then you have the Gilbert Burns fight where he looked literally horrible against Burns in that fight. And then he lost a boxing fight to Nate Diaz. I mean, I don't know exactly what Jorge Masvidal is looking to do. Really, I really don't know what Jorge Masvidal is looking to do in this Conor McGregor fight. I don't know how marketable that is for the UFC. I don't think the UFC believes that it's 2021 anymore, 2021 or 2020, where Conor McGregor knocked out Donald Cerrone and George Masvidal has just knocked out Ben Askren, and now you have these two massive superstars at the absolute pinnacle of the sport right now at welterweight. You could do McGregor versus Masvidal, winner fights for the title, and they just completely botch that. No, the UFC ends up completely whiffing that. McGregor goes down to 155. They do the Poirier fights where they're also big, but I mean, imagine the Masvidal-McGregor fight, how big that would have been. Anyways, they're thinking about doing that for the White House right now. I don't think it's going to happen. Michael Chandler fight already got denounced by Dana White, which is hysterical. God bless Michael Chandler for the amount of turmoil he's been through going through this. I hope he got paid at least for the humility the UFC has put him through for this. and Conor McGregor. But nonetheless, yeah, I don't think McGregor returns. I don't think he's coming back for the White House. I don't think it's happening. I think it's all a big hoax. I think it's all a big whiff. McGregor's not fighting. Middleweight, Khamzat Chimaev leaves the division. I think Khamzat Chimaev goes up to light heavyweight. I think Khamzat Chimaev defends against Nasruddin Imavov. I don't think he has anything interesting at middleweight. I think the UFC is going to understand. It would be so much more interesting to have a guy go up and fight much more interesting matchups at light heavyweight, especially like a Yuri Prochazka fight. How big would that be between Khamzat Chimaev and Yuri Prochazka? This freak of nature in Khamzat that we think can walk through everybody. He goes up another 20 pounds in weight and fights Yuri Prochazka. For a light heavyweight title, becoming a two-division champion. And I don't love the whole UFC champions going up in weight thing, but when it makes sense sometimes, I like pushing it, because if Khamzat Chimaev vacates the middleweight belt, middleweight becomes a lot more interesting because it's a lot more open. Khamzat Chimaev, I think, walks through middleweight. I don't think it's as simple at light heavyweight. I don't necessarily think light heavyweight is an elite division or some nasty deep division, but it's definitely going to be more difficult with 20 pounds up for Chimaev. It's more of a challenge for him. It's more interesting for these matchups. The Yuri Prochazka fight is 100% the most interesting one you can make for either division. Chimaev versus Yuri, 100% is the biggest fight at both middleweight and at light heavyweight if Alex Pereira leaves light heavyweight. And then you have Alex Pereira versus Chimaev. Maybe you do that at light heavyweight instead. Maybe that's the one. Nonetheless, I do think Chimaev is leaving the middleweight division after defending against Nasruddin Imavov. The UFC makes middleweight a lot more interesting, opens it up for much better overall title fights, much more competitive overall competition. And yeah, that's essentially it. Then middleweight, also Fluffy Hernandez, I do believe, becomes champion. Fluffy Hernandez, with Khamzat Chimaev leaving, I think is the best middleweight in the world. I think he submits Nasruddin Imavov. I think he breaks him down. I watched Sean Strickland pressure Nasruddin Imavov, put him in hell, and Nasruddin Imavov ends up breaking. But the difference is, I think Imavov has improved a lot. I think it'll be very difficult for Fluffy to continue that, but I think Fluffy will make it difficult for him to grappling. I think Imavov is a very poor, subpar grappler. I watched it in that Brendan Allen fight. I think Fluffy Hernandez is going to walk him down, and Fluffy Hernandez will end up becoming UFC champion if Khamzat Chimaev, and what I do believe, Khamzat Chimaev leaves the middleweight division. Now, Dricus du Plessis is there. I think that's a bad matchup for DDP. I think Fluffy could beat DDP. I think he beats Imavov. I saw him beat Brendan Allen. We saw him beat Roman Dolidze just recently. I think Fluffy Hernandez is literally the best middleweight in the world outside of Khamzat Chimaev, but I think the gap between him and Chimaev is so big, it's not worth seeing that fight. It just isn't. I think middleweight, Fluffy Hernandez, champion as soon as Chimaev leaves the division. Light heavyweight, Alex Pereira, I believe, leaves the division as well. So, do I think there's a chance at Pereira versus Chimaev? Yes. I think it'd be a sick fight. I think it'd be an absolute elite spectacle to put on. Why not? It makes no sense not to put it on. But at the same time, the UFC don't seem keen on it. Alex Pereira doesn't seem keen on staying at light heavyweight, and I think he wants to go fight for 3-division championship status at heavyweight, which I very much understand, and I do think he deserves it for what he's done for the UFC in the past 4 years, the activity at that age, the finishes, saving UFC 300, saving loads of different events in general. I mean, the guy has been the poster boy for the UFC since he's been in the UFC and defeating Israel Adesanya, especially becoming light heavyweight, Chama, Poatan. They've been the guy for them. Why not give him 3-division championship status? He seems keen on leaving light heavyweight. He's beaten Yuri Prochazka twice already. Yuri Prochazka still is at the top of the division. One of the two guys considered next up between him and Carlos Ulberg. Carlos Ulberg fight is not compelling whatsoever for Alex Pereira. It makes no sense. Ulberg's not that big of a star. He's not really the most marketable guy in the world. Yes, he's a good-looking guy, but then what, right? What personality does Ulberg have behind it, or has he shown? And what promotion has the UFC put behind Carlos Ulberg to make it an interesting fight? They haven't. The one thing is Ulberg is Israel Adesanya's teammate, so you can kind of put that into effect, but no one believes he's nearly as good as Adesanya, and we watch Pereira finish him and go 1-1. Do we really think Ulberg's going to beat Pereira or compete against him or at least make it compelling? No, we don't. Nobody thinks he's going to beat Pereira at distance in a kickboxing fight. I think Alex Pereira should just go up to heavyweight, fight Tom Aspinall or fight John Jones, depending on what he's going to do. We'll see what the UFC ends up doing, but I do think he leaves the division nonetheless. And then we're going to have Khamzat Chimaev becoming a 2-division champion. Like I said, I do believe he goes up in weight. Now, whether he fights Carlos Ulberg, whether he fights Yuri Prochazka, or even if Alex Pereira somehow stays in the division, Khamzat Chimaev, I think, is leaving middleweight. I think he's going up to light heavyweight. And I think he's going to beat whoever it is as champion and become a 2-division champion at light heavyweight. I think everybody at the top, whether it's Yuri, whether it's Carlos Ulberg, whether it's Alex Pereira, cannot stop a single takedown from Chimaev the moment he shoots it within the first 7 seconds of the fight, and he's going to walk them down like a dog and submit whoever it is in front of him. Chimaev, 2-division champion at light heavyweight. And Tom Aspinall versus Alex Pereira will happen at heavyweight. I think Tom Aspinall is going to come back, hopefully, love of God, let Tom Aspinall come back, because this fight is a must, and I would love to have it at the White House, but of course, Aspinall's eye injury, the surgeries, UFC and their reluctance on being able to book correct fights for this White House card. I don't know how this is going to look, but there is no reason we don't get a Tom Aspinall versus Alex Pereira fight if Tom Aspinall is back fighting in 2026. Cyril Gane does deserve the rematch. Let's give Cyril Gane the rematch. Deserve is a strong word, because I don't think he deserved the fight to begin with. But nonetheless, Alex Pereira versus Tom Aspinall. You can't just slot in Alex Pereira over Cyril Gane at that moment. I don't know. Cyril Gane did poke Tom Aspinall's eye, and the UFC has done crazier things. But nonetheless, I think this fight happens. We already have this infamous photo of Tom Aspinall staring him down during Alex Pereira's title fight. I'd love to see the fight. I think we get it towards the end of the year. I think we get Alex Pereira finally fighting again, and it's going to be at heavyweight, and I think we're going to get this fantastic showcasing of Pereira going up to fight for 3-division champ status against maybe the best heavyweight we've seen skill for skill in the history of the UFC, and I think we're going to get this fight in 2026. And last but not least, not weight class particular, but overall, I think 3+ top 5 fighters retire, including champions. Let me list the fighters that I think can retire. Michael Chandler's not top 5, but Justin Gaethje. Michael Chandler could definitely retire this year. Justin Gaethje, Islam Makhachev, Alexander Volkanovski, Alex Pereira. Those are 3 champions in and of themselves. Kamaru Usman can definitely retire as well. I said Justin Gaethje. I have a couple more that I had on my bingo card as well that I do want to pull up. But there are so many fighters that I think can retire in 2026 that are at the absolute top of the sport, which is insane to think of it, because how often do you see Israel Adesanya could also retire as well, especially if Joe Pyfer, he's fighting Joe Pyfer. I think Joe Pyfer could beat him, and I think Joe Pyfer could finish it. I think Joe Pyfer submits Israel Adesanya. And then we have Israel Adesanya coming in on 4 fights, losing in a row, and he got finished in, 3 of those in a row on top of that? I think Usman can retire. I think Adesanya retires. I think Gaethje retires. Usman wants that 1 foot out the door already. Gaethje as well, 1 foot out the door. Adesanya, three losses in a row. You go 4. Volkanovski already flirting with it. Alex Pereira, he wants one more fight, and I think he's done. He's 38 years old already. Makhachev, 17-fight win streak, defends both belts. Then what? What more do you want, right? I think we're going to get a lot of top-tier fighters at the very pinnacle of the sport retiring. Legends, guys who are currently running the game right now, retiring by the end of the year. 3+ at the minimum. Like and subscribe. Thank you guys all for watching. If you guys enjoy content like this, we'll be posting every single day. I'll be live this Saturday on every single UFC pay-per-view this year, of course. But this Saturday on both YouTube and TikTok, doing a watch-along/fight companion for UFC 324. So make sure you guys are tuned in for that. Appreciate everybody for watching. Thank you guys all so much for tuning in. Like and subscribe. Comment below. Follow the TikTok at MMA_DBM. Join the 4-ounce giveaway league. $25 to whoever has the best predictions on UFC 324 and scores the most in that league. Free to play, free to join. DM me on TikTok at MMA_DBM if you have any questions on that. Thank you all so much for watching. Have a good one.